What seems like a routine traffic case quickly turns into a heated courtroom clash when Mr. Williams, a self-proclaimed sovereign citizen, refuses to recognize the authority of the court. Instead of addressing the traffic violations, he argues that he wasn't driving, he was simply traveling. He claims he is a human being, not a legal person, and therefore believes licensing and insurance laws don't apply to him. Confident in his theory, he cites Supreme Court cases like Shapiro v. Thompson and Murdoch v. Pennsylvania, insisting they protect his constitutional right to travel. But the judge patiently explains that those rulings deal with completely different issues and do not give anyone permission to ignore traffic laws. She makes it clear that when you use public roads, you automatically agree to follow the rules and regulations that govern them. As the exchange continues, the tension rises. Mr. Williams argues that statutes are not real laws and claims the court has no jurisdiction over him. The judge firmly shuts down those claims, clarifying that statutes are indeed laws and that his interpretations are simply incorrect. What unfolds is a powerful reminder that courtroom arguments based on misread legal theories rarely stand up to real judicial scrutiny, and that refusing to follow the law comes with real consequences.
It was about a welfare case, Mr. Williams, where she wanted to go to a different state, and they told her that because she didn't have established residency, in that she was going to be denied services.
Right, and that violated her.
Right, because it's talking
right
about services. She needed to take care of her child. She was 19 and she was pregnant.
But you avoiding the facts of the case. Even though that she filed a lawsuit against the state for denying her privileges, but the Supreme Court ruled that the Supreme Court ruled that can't happen because that also be violating her right to travel throughout the states.
To receive the benefits that she needs in order to take care of herself and her child.
Yes, but you're missing the argument that the Supreme Court has stated. That'll be violating her First Amendment right. Life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Travel. I don't want you to miss that fact. That's what they ruled.
They said the closest the Supreme Court has come to overturning Shapiro Thomas was in 1995 with Anderson versus Green, California Welfare and Interstate Code annotated section instituted a 1-year residency requirement for welfare aid, violating Shapiro versus Thompson. Both lower courts in California affirmed that violated Shapiro versus Thompson and granted the injunction. Due to the procedural issue, California's residency requirement never went into effect, creating no justifiable controversy action and no actual issuance for the court to rule on. Whether they receive a waiver from the Secretary of Health or Human Services to set aside Shapiro versus Thompson, making the residency requirement pseudo-legal, the waiver was challenged again, and it's holding that the state court and the Secretary of HHS had not adequately considered public comment on the issues. This is about welfare. Yeah, this is about the welfare system and the ability for people. You cannot stop people from traveling. I don't see anything in here about a driver's license.
The decision of the court.
Right, she has the right to go places.
Look, the court reaffirmed the right to travel under the 14th Amendment Privilege and Immunities Clause in Suez versus Roe. So they converted it to another case. But the conclusion of the case like that would be violating her right to travel. It has something to do with the welfare, but it's violating her right to travel.
It's all about that. Because the reason why we can't prohibit her from being able to travel or to go to another state is because then they're saying once she gets to that state, she has to establish some type of residency. And what they're saying is that if she doesn't have that residency, she wouldn't get the services needed. And so they're saying you can't say, oh, you can't go to this state and not get the stuff that you need to take care of yourself and your family just because you're not. I can't stop her. I can't say you can't move to this state and then we're going to block everything. I can't do that. Right. This is not about a license.
Which will violate the right to travel.
No.
That was the decision of the court. I'm not
based on. Yes, you have the right to travel, but this is concerning services.
So if I chose to carry a weapon, I will be bearing arms.
If you chose to carry a weapon in the state of in Illinois, that's an automatic. You're not allowed to carry weapons at all in the state of Illinois unless you're a law enforcement officer. So if you traveled over the state lines and you went to Illinois and you tried to carry a gun, they would tell you no.
But that's irrelevant, Your Honor. We're talking about the state of Michigan. I have a right to bear arms, but you will call it receiving
exactly.
But the Constitution of Michigan states that I can bear arms, but
because once again, and we had this conversation already, the states can make stuff more, the localities can make stuff, they can, and it's a state law anyways, but they can be harsher than the U.S. Constitution, but they can do something that would take away from the U.S. Constitution. So they're not taking away your right to bear arms. They're just putting parameters around that right.
That's kind of irrelevant.
Okay.
And like Murdoch versus Pennsylvania, say no state can convert a secure liberty into a privilege. Our secure liberty, First Amendment, is the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness.
Mm-hmm.
Right to travel throughout the United States of America. I'm relying on the constitutional rights. I'm not just out here willfully nilly, like United States versus Bishop.
But you are, because you're only taking the part that you want to be applied to you. So you are out here willy-nilly. Because if you were following, if you were following everything, you would want to follow everything and all the rules that were put into place. So all that
I'm following laws, not
following rules. What you want to follow. And that's no. We talked about how that leads to anarchy. People can't do whatever they want to do. They say that I can follow only this. That's like me coming one day and saying I want to practice law and I want to be a judge, and I haven't gone through any of the things to become a judge. That's not how it works.
I see how you put it.
I can't sit up there with a fake P number. They wouldn't let me do that.
I see how you put it, but that's not true. What about Title 18 USC Section 241?
So Williams, do you want a trial on Monday or not? You can't argue this stuff to the jury.
Yeah, I want to go to trial, but I can't.
Okay. You can't argue this stuff to the jury. You can argue that maybe something, making sure that they didn't check the things. Like you have to follow the law. I have to treat you as an attorney in that place on Monday. So I have to treat that you know how to practice and go about the way of law. And these different things, like you can't just give the jury cases and stuff like that. That's not what it's going to be about. And you'll most likely end up with objections that I'll have to sustain because it's going to be talking about the facts of these particular cases where the officers came today. Attorney Mason will make the argument for, and officers came to testify about.
What are they testifying about?
About these different stops.
Which is unlawful.
Different tickets. Okay. Well, I gave you plenty of time to write a motion about unlawful, and you did not want to.
So now we're here. I gave you affidavits stating the facts, which you needed, and
exactly. And the facts are to be argued before a jury. If they differ from these facts that on the tickets, we're here to talk about these tickets. I've already made my ruling long ago that they had the right to stop. These tickets are the tickets for which they wrote them for.
Yes, they have a right to stop persons, but I'm not a person. I'm a human being. I have no contract with the Secretary of State. I'm traveling. I'm not driving. I'm not driving for gain or profit. I'm going to point A to point B, not violating nobody's rights. I'm just traveling freely, like I'm exercising my constitutional rights. Like Title 18 USC Section 241. Can you look that up?
I let you have a whole hour of time to discuss all of these previously, Mr. Williams. We talked about all of these, and at the end I made the ruling that the court did have jurisdiction and that the officers could write tickets.
You haven't explained jurisdiction.
I don't have to explain anything. It's not my job to explain it.
But you said you did explain, but you didn't.
But I said I allowed you to explain it. Do you need to put it up on YouTube?
But the burden is on the prosecutor.
Right, not on me. I'm the court. I just call balls and strikes.
And the prosecutor cannot state how she has jurisdiction.
Okay, Attorney Mason, do you want to state how you have jurisdiction over these matters?
Statute provides us with the jurisdiction over this matter The statutes and the laws of the court provide the jurisdiction over these matters.
Matters that's subject.
I am empowered by the state. I am empowered by my bar card, which has been submitted to the state of Michigan. I'm empowered by the city of Detroit.
But she's still not stating. I gotta object to that because she's not stating how she has jurisdiction over.
She's telling you it's by the statutes. The statutes that were given.
Statutes is not law.
Okay.
I'm obeying by the law.
So you want us to call them laws? Laws are statutes. They're the same thing. It's just a fancy way of saying laws. Statutes are just a fancy way of saying laws.
Statutes are persuasive. Laws are mandatory.
These are laws. Okay, statutes are laws. That's just a fancy way of saying laws.
Yeah, they derive from the law.
At this point, Your Honor, I'm going to
rules and regulations.
I'm going to just make a motion that these matters have already been resolved. That the court has previously stated that the trial was set forth regarding the facts of the incidents that have arisen, and that the witnesses will testify only to the facts regarding the tickets.
What are the facts?
The facts are the things on the ticket. So you have to research the law and find out exactly what each one is to show.
According to Michigan Vehicle Code 257-744A, police officer knowing me.
Okay.
I travel with a passport. My ID been canceled since 2018, so none of that is true.
Just because you cancel your ID, and this is the last argument for today, and then we're just gonna have trial on Monday. Just because you cancel your ID doesn't mean now you have the right to drive in the state of Michigan. That's not the law of this state. When you avail yourselves of the roads, the lights, the streets, the anything. Once you avail, once you take place, once you take part on those items, then you automatically allow.
What starts as a routine traffic case slowly transforms into one of the most intense and revealing courtroom exchanges you'll ever witness. The charges themselves are simple, traffic violations, the kind courts handle every single day. But the moment Mr. Williams begins to speak, it becomes clear that this hearing is about to go in a completely different direction. From the very beginning, Mr. Williams makes it known that he does not recognize the situation the way everyone else in the room does. He doesn't begin by addressing the ticket. He doesn't ask about evidence. Instead, he challenges the foundation of the court's authority over him. Calm but unwavering, he tells the judge that he is not a person under statutory law, he is a human being. To him, that distinction is everything. He explains that on the day in question, he was not driving a motor vehicle. He was traveling. And according to his interpretation of the Constitution, traveling is a fundamental right that cannot be regulated. Because of that belief, he argues that he does not need a driver's license. He does not need vehicle registration. He does not need insurance. In his view, requiring those things would be a violation of his constitutional right to travel freely. The judge listens carefully at first. She allows him to fully explain his reasoning. She asks clarifying questions. She gives him room to speak. Mr. Williams then begins citing Supreme Court decisions, confidently referencing cases like Shapiro v. Thompson and Murdoch v. Pennsylvania. He claims these rulings confirm that states cannot interfere with his right to move about freely. He speaks with certainty, as though he has unlocked a legal loophole that others have overlooked. But as he continues, it becomes clear that his understanding of those cases is deeply flawed. The judge calmly explains that the rulings he is relying on dealt with entirely different issues, including welfare residency requirements and licensing for religious solicitation. They were not traffic cases. They did not address driver's licenses. They did not eliminate a state's authority to regulate the operation of motor vehicles on public roads. Mr. Williams resists that explanation. He insists that the principle behind those cases supports him. He repeats the phrase, right to travel, again and again, treating it as a shield against every counterpoint. He argues that the government is confusing traveling with driving, and that driving is a commercial activity, while traveling is a private right. In his mind, that semantic difference exempts him from regulation. The judge responds with patience, but also precision. She explains that while citizens absolutely have a constitutional right to interstate travel, that right does not erase a state's power to regulate how vehicles are operated for public safety. Operating a motor vehicle is not the same thing as walking down a sidewalk or buying a bus ticket. It involves machinery capable of causing serious harm. That is why licensing systems exist, not to deny rights, but to ensure minimum safety standards. Still, Mr. Williams continues. He argues that he has no contract with the Secretary of State, suggesting that because he never personally agreed to these laws, they do not bind him. The judge counters this by explaining a basic legal principle: laws do not require individual contracts to be enforceable. They apply by virtue of jurisdiction. When someone resides in a state and uses its public infrastructure, roads, highways, traffic signals, they are subject to its laws. The conversation becomes increasingly circular. Mr. Williams claims statutes are not laws. The judge firmly corrects him, stating that statutes are, in fact, laws enacted by the legislature. He questions jurisdiction. She explains that jurisdiction is established by the location of the offense and the authority granted to the court by law. Each time he attempts to redefine a legal concept, the judge brings the discussion back to established legal definitions. As the exchange continues, the tension in the room rises. What began as patient listening gradually shifts into visible frustration. The judge's tone remains controlled, but it becomes more direct. She points out that repeating incorrect interpretations does not make them valid. She emphasizes that personal beliefs about sovereignty do not override statutory requirements. Mr. Williams appears convinced that he has discovered a hidden truth about the legal system, that by carefully choosing words and citing selective passages from court opinions, he can place himself outside the reach of traffic law. But the judge methodically dismantles that idea. She explains that Supreme Court decisions must be read in context. They cannot be pulled apart and repurposed to support unrelated claims. The heart of the issue becomes clear. The right to travel protects movement between states without unreasonable barriers. It does not guarantee the right to operate an unlicensed vehicle on public roads. The Constitution limits government power, yes, but it also allows states to enact reasonable regulations to protect public safety. Driver's license requirements fall squarely within that authority. As Mr. Williams presses further, the judge highlights another fundamental principle. When you choose to use public roads maintained by taxpayer funds, you accept the regulations that govern them. Roads are not private property. They are public infrastructure, built and maintained under statutory frameworks. Participating in that system means following its rules. The courtroom exchange becomes a striking example of how sovereign citizen arguments often unfold. They rely heavily on wordplay, redefining terms like person, driver, and contract. They cite court decisions without context. They assume that if a right exists in one situation, it must automatically override regulations in all others. But law does not function that way. It operates within structured frameworks, precedents, and clearly defined jurisdictional boundaries. At several moments, the judge gives Mr. Williams opportunities to focus on the actual charges. Instead of debating constitutional theory, he could address the evidence, present mitigating circumstances, or discuss resolution options. But he remains committed to challenging the court's legitimacy itself. The patience of the court is tested. Time passes. Arguments repeat. The judge reminds him that misunderstanding the law does not exempt someone from compliance. She makes it clear that if the case proceeds to trial, the arguments he is presenting are unlikely to succeed before a jury. What makes this exchange so compelling is not just the legal debate, but the contrast between belief and reality. Mr. Williams speaks with absolute conviction. He truly appears to believe that the right to travel nullifies licensing requirements. Yet the judge, grounded in statutory law and precedent, systematically explains why that belief is incorrect. The discussion also touches on a broader issue, the strain such arguments place on the legal system. Court time is limited. Resources are finite. When hearings are consumed by debates built on misinterpretations, it slows the process for everyone else waiting for their cases to be heard. The legal system is designed for disputes grounded in actual law, not personal reinterpretations detached from context. As the hearing continues, it becomes evident that no dramatic revelation is coming. There is no hidden clause that exempts Mr. Williams from traffic laws. There is no overlooked Supreme Court decision granting unlimited immunity to unlicensed drivers. There is only the steady application of existing law. The judge ultimately reinforces a simple but powerful message. Constitutional rights are real and vital, but they exist alongside lawful regulations. Freedom of movement does not eliminate traffic safety laws. Personal disagreement with statutes does not erase them. Courts are bound by enacted law and precedent, not by individual philosophical objections. By the end of the exchange, the central lesson is unmistakable. Legal arguments must be rooted in accurate interpretations and relevant authority. Redefining terms does not change statutory meaning. Citing unrelated cases does not create exemptions. And asserting sovereignty does not dissolve jurisdiction. What began as a straightforward traffic matter evolves into a revealing case study of how the courtroom responds when ideology collides with established law. It demonstrates the patience of the judiciary, the structure of legal reasoning, and the limits of constitutional arguments when stretched beyond their intended scope. In the end, the courtroom remains what it has always been, a place where claims must withstand scrutiny, where rights are balanced with responsibilities, and where the rule of law applies not selectively, but universally.